It is a joy today to have Marika Flatt on the podcast. Marika is a seasoned book publicist and the founder of PR by the Book. After starting her career in the late 90s as a young, smiling and dialing publicist, she quickly rose through the ranks of a boutique literary PR firm before launching her own company in 2002. For over 2 decades, Marika has championed authors, built lasting media relationships, and adapted to the ever-changing world of book promotion with integrity and creativity. Beyond PR, she's a travel editor for Texas Lifestyle magazine and a regular on Texas TV sharing travel stories. Her passion for connecting people to powerful stories continues to shape the publishing industry today. Marika, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
So happy to be here, William. I love your podcast and I'm a regular listener, so this is a thrill.
Well, it is for me as well. I've been looking forward to this one.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. Marika, how did you get started?
So I really cut my teeth doing internships in TV when I was in college, and I really was on that path to wanting to go the TV route. And when I graduated from college, I landed in the industry of book publicity, and it was kind of a funny thing because I ended up writing an article called What is a Book Publicist early on in my career, and it took off and people loved that article. Nobody really knew what a book publicist did at that time.
Awesome.
And I always say that my extended family always thought I was a book publisher for the longest time. Oh, what are you publishing these days? And I would have to say, well, actually, we handle the media relations after the book comes out. We do not publish the books. So it was kind of that education of even my extended family trying to figure out what a book publicist is. As someone who grew up, curled up with a good book in the corner of my bed, just reading a novel and just loving the joy of reading, and then being able to pair that with media that I loved so much. I mean, that was my track in college. Book publicity just became the perfect industry for me. And I think we can say that now. I've been in this business 28 years total. So 23 for PR by the Book. But, as you mentioned, I got into it with another small company. And, I'm so grateful and thankful to my first boss, Annie Phoenix. She is still a dear friend to me. She's no longer in book publicity, but, she took me under her wing in a really small company, taught me everything she knew, and put a ton of faith in me to lead that company in my 20s, which is
Wow.
makes me laugh now. But when you say, how did you develop leadership? Part of it early on was kind of sink or swim. I was in a small company where you had to do a little bit of everything. And, Annie put so much faith in me that when she was ready to kind of take a little bit of time and step away, she put me in that position. And I have to say, I made a lot of mistakes in that first job. I believe that I had inherent leadership skills, but they needed to be trained and developed. And so she actually hired a business coach for me before she stepped away from the business. And that really helped me a great deal, working one-on-one with that business coach. And then I just became a continual learner. Like I have just, and to this day, I value continuing education so much that I just tried to put in the work. I read articles, I read books. Later on in my career, when podcasts like yours became a thing, I make time for that. And so I would say that I became a leader, in a hard fought way that I had to learn very early on in my 20s. what was missing, and I couldn't just absorb the leadership styles that were around me because those weren't necessarily the right ways to lead. And so, I don't think about it that often. So thank you for asking this question. But, I really feel proud of that journey, these last 2+ decades of learning what it takes to be a leader. And, I still slip, I still make mistakes, but, I try to keep all those plates spinning, and one of those plates is making sure that I'm leading in a way that our team can respond to. And so, yeah, that's a long roundabout answer, but and kind of nebulous. But I mean, that's kind of what it is when you're learning at an early age and then starting your own business.
100%. I love that you shared the story about Annie. I think that's so helpful. It is so easy for, I think, any entrepreneur to see potential sometimes in their team members,
Hmm.
and yet so difficult to hand them not just responsibility for tasks, but authority.
Mm,
Giving somebody
mhm,
responsibility and authority,
mhm,
that's true delegation.
mhm.
That is how you
Really,
empower and build up a leader. And
right.
that's what she did with you, it sounds
Hmm.
like.
Hmm.
I can imagine that was not the easiest thing in the world for her,
No, it
because
probably wasn't. And I think that's why she'll always have such a special place in my heart because she believed in me from day one. I mean, I literally was 1 month out of graduating college when I went in for that interview. She hired
wow,
me on the spot, and then we worked really well side by side as long as she stayed in the business. And she eventually ended up selling that company to some other people, and I stayed for a little while under that leadership, but then knew that it was time for me to go out on my own.
goodness. And I think sometimes that's a fear for a leader, is that if they pour into and invest in somebody else, that person will eventually leave. It's like we
Yeah,
have in our heads
yeah.
that everybody who's with me now, they'll be with me forever. When the
Mhm.
reality is that's just not the case. That is not the case for the vast majority of the people that we're going to lead. They're going to be with us for a season, you
Right,
know? And
right.
understanding that, I think, is so critical.
Yeah.
Has that been something that you have carried forward into your business with the teams that you lead?
He will latch on to my 20-something-year-old publicist and really want to mentor them because I see so much of myself in some of them, and it really inspires me to put in some extra time and nurturing into them because I see the real base instincts of a great book publicist in them. And I want to really nurture that in a way that allows them to continue to grow. And we PR by the book is a bigger team than that company was. For a long time, that company was only 3 people until we started growing it. And we're a bigger team than that. So I probably don't have as many opportunities to just completely hand something off to those young publicists, but I do hand off things that they can own and oversee. So whether it's something like we built our author to influencer program in 2019 and launched it in 2020, and that's basically um our give back to the literary community. It's kind of a DIY program that we developed where there's a lot of workshops in there. There's something like 70 workshops that I created. So I'm in every single video.
Oh my
And
goodness.
once we got that up and running, I was able to hand that off to one of our younger people, and she runs that now because it's we're not creating new taped sessions necessarily. We just do monthly education and she does those interviews. So that's an example of something that, that's something she can own and do. And she knows that I'm here if she ever needs me to come back in. And then we have another program that I was able to hand off to another one of our assistant publicists called Next Level PR, which is It's a program that's very budget conscious for someone who wants to extend a campaign on a very minimal level. And she's the publicist that oversees that. So again, able to say, this is yours, own it, love it, take care of it, nurture it, let me know when you need help with it. And so I do try to find those types of programs within PR by the Book to assign to younger people and let them oversee them and grow them and make some decisions on their own with that.
I love the intentionality of that, of looking for things that you can use to build up leaders, to build up team members. I think that's so important. Going back just a little bit, you mentioned that your extended family were not completely clear on what a publicist was.
Mhm.
I imagine some of our listeners might not be as well. Could you
Sure.
explain what you do at PR by the Book, kind of the high 30,000-foot view of what you
Absolutely.
do and how this benefits the authors that you work with?
Absolutely. So we are mostly hired by the authors, but we do have publishers who hire us as well. And so when a book is set to be published, and William, you already know this, but there's three tracks of publishing these days: traditional, hybrid, and self-publishing. And we work with all of those types. And so when an author is set to be published and they have a publication date in mind, that could be, if it's traditional publishing, it could be a year from now. If it's hybrid publishing, it could easily be 6 months from now. And so then they know that they need help to get earned media. And sometimes they need help with their social media. And they need to just get the word out about the book, because if they don't, as I say, it's going to sit there on the proverbial online shelf and nobody's going to know that it exists. So they hire us to get the word out about their book. And most times it's around the launch of the book. So pub date, publication date. However, we have worked on projects where somebody released a book. For whatever reason, they didn't do any publicity around it, and they know that they need to promote it, give it another life in order to build up that piece of their brand and maybe take their brand to the next level. They need to build up their name recognition. And sometimes, as you know, the book is part of their business. So it might be a calling card because maybe they want to build up their speaking career. Maybe they hybrid published this time and they would like to be able to land an agent in the future to traditionally publish books in the future. So when authors come to us, they have a wide variety of goals. And that's something I like to discuss with them in that introductory free discovery call that I do with them is, what do you want to get out of promoting this book? And it could be any of those things that I just said. It could also be book sales. And I always say to people, we don't measure our success through book sales because there's too many variables that we don't have control over: distribution and sales. How good does an author do when we get them on an interview? Do they say
Mhm.
the name of the book enough? And I'll listen to, especially podcasts that our clients do, and I'll go back to them with a couple of tips. And usually my number one tip for them is, you never said the title of your book. You said, when I wrote my book, when I was researching my book. And so I tell them, say, when I wrote Dear Dana, I did this, or say, it was a long process to put together The Power of Who. And when I did that, so they can merge and blend that book title in, but that could be a reason why an interview results in sales or doesn't,
Mm.
because maybe the listener really loved what that expert said, but they only heard the book title at the very end and they were just busy writing notes of what they learned. And then they didn't realize what the book was to go buy it. So I always tell authors, we measure our success through media exposure. And that's the name of the game. That's our lane. That's what we live and breathe. Those are the relationships we have. So we're looking at that media exposure report, and at the end of every month, okay, are we where we want to be? Do we need to pivot a little bit? Do we need to use a different hook and angle that's more timely? And so we're constantly looking at those things. And we're not looking at book sales. That's up to them. They can keep their finger on the pulse of that with their publisher, or if they're self-publishing, they are their own publisher. I mean, that's the essence of self-publishing. And so we encourage them, you do that. You can track your book sales. We're going to track the media exposure that we land for an author. And like I said, sometimes publishers will hire, we have a lot of great relationships with publishing houses where if they've got a really big book that they need some help with in a season, they'll assign it to us. Or maybe they just have a really busy season and they need help on a couple of books. And so, we have those good ongoing relationships with publishing houses as well. And it has been 23 years. So most of our clients come to us either through repeat business or word of mouth. And we like it that way because we love those long-term relationships.
I love that. And I think there's such value in hiring an expert like you to do this. I talk to a lot of people who are writing a book or writing a second book or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I'm just doing it myself. And I'm like, what's your plan? What's your strategy?
Right.
And so often it's, we'll put it up on Amazon and, people will find it. Well, that's hope. And hope is not a strategy. Careful there.
Hope is good in certain situations, but not necessarily when it comes to book publicity.
Exactly. One of the things I often tell them when we did my last book, I went on a podcast book tour and I was on about 85 shows that year talking about the book. And now I'm scared to go back and listen to see how many times I said the title of the book. Because I'm like, oh man, did I say it enough? But that's such a simple, actionable piece of advice. I love that.
Yeah.
And I hope our listeners, wherever they are in this journey, are saying, oh yeah, okay, that's important. Don't lose that.
Right.
Jot that down. That's so critical.
Right.
What other mistakes do you see authors make as they are stepping into this journey?
Yeah. So one of the mistakes that doesn't have anything to do with media training, like the last one kind of falls into media training category, but one of the mistakes is when they think that they're going to just shoot for the stars right away and they just want top tier media outlets. And I'm very honest and very transparent with authors in that discovery meeting to, I've prepped for the meeting. So I know what their book is. I know a little bit about their project. And I'm very honest with setting those expectations of what media they are appropriate for. And they might just be starting out, and this might be a debut book for them. And they might have a little bit of a following on social media, but this is their first book. And so I prepare them and say, listen, we're going to start with your local and regional media because we need to get some clips that we can embed in our pitch to bigger media, because bigger media is going to want to know that you can handle yourself, whether it be in front of a camera or just in front of a microphone. They need to know that you can carry yourself. So we're going to start with your local press, and you need to really appreciate those opportunities because you can't just look at that as, oh, well, that's my local TV station. No, embrace that, get excited about that. And so that's one thing. Another thing would be if they feel like they're too busy to do what's needed for some outlets. So what I mean by that is, there's some really great online digital publications out there that want to do a Q&A with an author. So they want to send over, let's just say 10 interview questions and have the author answer those and have them be original. And so, here's another tip. I tell authors, get your iPhone, open up your notes app, voice in your answers to those questions, send them to yourself via email, put them into a Google Doc and clean them up.
That's good.
And that is the quickest, easiest way, because then also you're just speaking it. You're very authentic when you're answering those questions. And now, granted, don't just send that straight version because it's going to need some editing, because I do that myself, for different things. Especially you mentioned the travel writing. I'll do that for my first draft is I'll just open up that notes app and I'll just voice in the highlights of, you're my friend. If you say to me, Marika, what is your favorite place in the Florida Keys? And I just want to tell you all about my pick and why. I'm just going to voice it in like that and just tell you, here's why you need to go to such and such place. And then, of course, I'll put that in the Google Doc and clean it up as the next draft. And it probably goes through 3 drafts. But, that's just an easy way for an author to provide what that media outlet is looking for. And it really doesn't take that
Good.
much time. So you and I could talk about this all day. I don't want to use up all of our time going and talking about the mistakes that I see. But, we just have to, our clients hire us because we're experts in this field. You mentioned that earlier. And we want them to take our advice and know that we're not going to steer them wrong. We're not going to put them on a media outlet that's not appropriate for their messaging, but we're going to find the outlets that we believe, have an audience that needs to hear their messaging. And sometimes it might take a little work or effort or time on their part, but, they need to be ready for that. You said you did 85
Yeah.
podcast interviews. That took a good chunk of your time that year. Yeah,
It did. But it was worth it,
exactly.
because of the relationships that I built, the networking that I was able to do, even with those podcast hosts that then
Yeah.
turned into other things,
Right.
not to mention the reach.
Right.
Because when you're guesting on other people's platforms, whether it's media, whether it's podcast, whatever, you're leveraging their audience, right?
Yes.
Without you having to build it.
Yes.
They're inviting you into their system.
Yes.
I love
I
that.
can't tell you how many times I'm talking to an author in that initial discovery meeting, and they'll say, I just loved hearing you on that publishing podcast. So I've done
Yes.
podcasts with, let's just say as an example, we've got some hybrid publishers that we've worked with for years, and we're kind of in their top 3 book publicist recommendations when they give it to their
Nice.
authors because they don't provide publicity in-house. And so, people will say, I loved that interview that you did with Greenleaf, and it was maybe like 5 years ago, and they're still finding it and they're still listening and getting a lot of good information out of it. And so, yeah, I mean, those come back around for sure for us. And, PR by the book is out there on the line in the World Wide Web because I've been doing those types of things for over 2 decades in one form or fashion.
Goodness. Well, and I often say that, you hire a coach when you want to go farther than you can go on your own, and you want to get there faster,
Mhm.
because they're going to bring their knowledge base to bear.
Yes.
That's what y'all do. Y'all are bringing your knowledge base of decades of experience to bear for your authors or for the publishers to say,
Yes.
hey, we're going to help you go farther and get there faster. We want to help you take that shortcut that we can
Mhm.
see. It's hard to see the whole picture when you're in the frame.
Oh my gosh.
You guys are on the outside. You can see the entire picture. You can say, hey, wait a minute.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
probably haven't seen this, but we have. Let us
Mhm.
help you.
Yes.
I think that's so needed.
One of my very first authors that I worked with as a baby book publicist in the late 90s, who ended up being a best-selling author, his name is Roy Williams, and he's an advertising guru. And I still use one of his quotes that he says, you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Yeah,
And I credit
absolutely.
him for that. But I love that quote because, whether it's I'm trying to write a pitch or I'm trying to write my own bio or,
Right.
any of those things, it's so hard to see the big picture from inside the bottle because you as the author, yeah, you're in there and that book backwards and forwards and that is your baby and that
Yes.
content and you will know that content better than any book publicist. But that's different than knowing how to package it for media outlets to be able to pay attention and utilize it.
So, so good. And that's why you have resources like the author to influencer,
Mhm.
this DIY program that
Mhm.
7+ resources inside. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like
It
the
took a
time that
long
it took to
time.
pour all that in. Wow.
I did those in about a 12-month, maybe a year and a half period of time
Goodness.
where I just thought, okay, because by that point I had been in the business 20 years, not PR by the book hadn't been around for 20 years, but I'd been in the business for 20 years. And I just thought, what do authors need to know? And who can I pull in to talk about this that knows more about that topic than I do? Those were the interviews. So for instance,
That's so
that could
good.
be the importance of good book cover design, for instance. So a lot of them were me interviewing an expert in a category related to book or, how to get something done. But if it had to do with publicity and promotion, I was teaching on like how to write a great press pack or I did a media training series. So how to do a great interview. So it was a combination of the two. Either I was teaching a course or I was interviewing somebody that could talk about a topic outside of just strict book publicity. So yeah,
So good.
I call it our nonprofit because I just feel like that about that program that, it's not what we're out there making a living on, but it is a resource that authors can tap into and it's extremely inexpensive. And that's what I tell people. If you can't hire a book publicist, because not everybody can, it's an investment. So if you can't invest in a book publicist, go on to author-to-influencer.com and learn how to do what you can do yourself. And we do have a member benefit in there that if somebody goes through the program and they think, okay, there's just like these 3 or 4 things, I can't do them myself, I need help, then they can get into a block of time, like an hourly block of time, where we can define, okay, this person needs help with these 3 things, these 5 things. And we can help them, on an hourly basis, blocks of
That's
time.
good.
So they're not stuck out there, on the boat in the middle of the ocean, all on their own. And they can get into a private Facebook group for the Author to Influencer where they can use that as a resource. Their fellow authors are in there. They can ask a question. We go in there literally the day of and answer a question.
Wow. Well, that's so good. So many resources that you are using and different methodologies that you're using to equip, to empower these authors to get their message out, right? To put this thing that they have, that they believe so strongly in, out into the world so people can actually see it.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's not one size fits all,
No, it can't be. That's exactly right. I love that.
Yeah.
Marika, I want to ask you this. You have to lead at a different level today than you did back in the days when you were working for somebody else, or when you started your company. And the same thing is going to be true 5 years from now. You have continued to level up and you're going to have to continue to do that because your clients and your team are going to need more from you. They're going to ask more from you. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with the new leadership skills that your clients and your team are going to need you to have in the days to come?
So I love that question, William, because the first answer would be that well before I met you, 5 years ago, we started working with a business coach. And I heartily recommend that for any business because it's almost like, I'm sorry, 4 years ago, not 5 years ago. It was the very end of 2021 when we started working with that coach. It was like here again, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? It was like my husband and I, we run PR by the Book together. We had taken PR by the Book as far as we could in our being in the container and not seeing the label from outside the bottle. We had done all that we could in terms of our innovation at the time. And so I just can't say enough about the importance of hiring a business coach and having that longevity because we are about to wrap up 4 years. And that program and that coach was able to continually help us innovate. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is that I am just a major fan of continuing education. I spend a decent amount of my work week every week listening to podcasts, reading articles, reading nonfiction. And, if I go out and do a walk, because I try to get moving a little bit 5 or 6 days a week, I'm either listening to a podcast. And let me tell you, even if I'm going out for a walk, I have a piece of paper and a pen with me because
Nice.
if I'm listening to your podcast, for example, I'll just get like ideas just shooting in my head. and I write them down straight away because I don't want to, think, oh, I'll get back from my 45-minute walk and then I'll write something down. No,
Right.
I'm writing it down right away. And then, yeah, I start my morning routine. I have a very specific morning routine. So after I get myself ready, I get my cup of coffee. I have a chair in the front room of my house. It's very calm and peaceful. I have some pretty little lights in that room. And I spend about the first hour reading things, whether it be, so I love, love, love my little book, Morning Fuel, that sits by my desk. It's well, it's not a desk, it's a little chair and a table, and it's one quick little passage that I read each morning. And then I might journal a little bit, and then I'm reading news of the day. I have two news aggregates that I read every morning real quick, and then I'll read an article or two that has come through that, I'm not going to take the time during my workday once I get behind my computer to read an article. So I'm going to save it in my inbox, and then I'm going to go back, and when I have that 1 hour before I go to my computer, I'm doing all of those things and going back to podcasts and webinars. If I'm in the kitchen by myself cooking dinner, I'm listening to one. If I am, having to commute somewhere, let's say, downtown Austin, and I've got 30, 45 minutes, that's enough time for a webinar or a podcast. And so I'm constantly, constantly educating myself in that way because things are changing all the time. And like you referenced, we have to continue to innovate. We have to continue to grow.
Yes,
We have to continue to learn. The only constant in small business is change.
that's right.
We just, and we have to model that for our teams too.
Yeah. That's so well said. I love the intentionality that you pour into this, that you don't expect one day you're just going to have all the time you need to learn and grow. No, you're going to make it happen. And it's a daily rhythm for you. And I hope our listeners, if they are not in the habit of doing something similar to that, they would make a commitment. You
Mhm.
can do this. You're in charge, right? Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can. Oh, I don't have an hour. Okay, great. Take 15 minutes.
Mhm.
Something is
Yeah.
better than nothing. Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can.
And William, another thing that really hit me hard these last few years, really spending time on those webinars and podcasts, is that it's not just the time that it takes to listen, it's also the time that it takes to implement the ideas that you got.
Well said. Well
And
said.
I guess it just like hit me a few years ago of like, well, you know what? If I'm not slowing down enough to implement these ideas, then they're just going off into the ether also.
Yes. Information never leads to transformation.
Mm,
Information plus execution leads to
yes.
transformation.
Yes. I
You've
love
got to
that.
allow and intentionally block time
Hmm.
to do something with what you're learning. So, so well said. I love it.
Right. Yeah. I blocked out Monday afternoons on my calendar, like 2 to 4 every Monday that's set aside as a recurring calendar. That's, I just have it blocked out as ownership duties.
Mm,
And I
that's
have
good.
that 2 hours where I am holding myself accountable to going to those notes and those ideas and working on implementation because,
Mm,
and granted, I do that stuff more than just 2 hours a week, but that 2 hours is set aside to remind me, okay, Monday afternoon is my time to work on the business. Even if I only am implementing those ideas those 2 hours a week, it's set there, and it's calling to me.
that's so good. Again, the intentionality of time blocking.
Mhm.
I'm going to set this aside. This is just for this. And I'm not going to let something else overrun it. I'm not
Right,
going to let the urgent crowd out the important.
right.
So, so good.
And you have to protect it, right? Because
Well,
if
if you
you
don't, who
don't,
will?
I do that with my exercise too. 3 days a week,
Yes,
I use my lunch break to go to an exercise class and I protect that fiercely
I love
because if
that.
I didn't, there's a million other things that can take over. And I need that brain break. I call it a shower for my brain.
That's good.
I didn't come up with that. One of my employees did over a decade
That's
ago.
good. I
But
love it.
that's what it is, I'm in that class and I'm thinking about things of like I'm problem solving, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's a very important time for me to get away from my computer in the middle of the day too.
For those of us who are staring at screens all day long, taking a break away
Mhm.
from the screens is more important than I think we might remember sometimes.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
One of the things that we share in common is a love for books.
Mhm.
Obviously, I have a little bit of a book problem. You can
Yeah.
see it.
Yes.
Is there a book that in your journey has made an incredibly big difference that you would recommend to the leaders who are listening?
So I have 2 that I wanna mention, and they're worlds apart from each other. But one of them, and this is actually a children's book, is The Little Engine That Could.
I
About
love it.
15 years ago, I had a mentor come back in and do a training day for our team. Uh, and she was the book publicist that I looked up to when I started my career. I saw her speak and I said, her name's Jody Blanco. And I said, that's who I want to be when I grow up. And she came back and did a workshop and she said, PR by the book is the little engine that could in this industry. You all work so hard. You are going to pull that train up that mountain and you are going to chug, chug, chug. And you're not the biggest and you're not the most well known, but you are going to work harder than any other train out there. And that's visual stuck with me. And I bought myself that book and it sits on my bookshelf. And I remember that we are the little engine that could, and we do work. I'll say we work the hardest and we work the longest and the most creatively to get that train up the mountain for our clients. So that's one. But I will tell you that about a year plus ago, I listened to Unreasonable Hospitality by
Oh,
Will
Will
Guidara.
Guidara.
Yes.
Yes.
And I don't know, I just happened across it and I put it in my Audible and I just voraciously absorbed that book and I took notes and I was constantly, every chapter writing things down. It was giving me those ideas. And I have told so many people I should be the book publicist for that book because everywhere I go. And it's especially comes up in my side hustle with Texas Lifestyle Magazine when I travel and I'm talking to people in the hospitality industry. But I will tell you that there were so many things that it gave me thoughts and ideas on for PR by the book. And we're not in hospitality. That's not our industry, but
Yep.
I just soaked up so much from that book.
Such a great read.
Hmm.
Such a great read.
Yeah.
You've been running PR by the book, you and your husband for decades, a couple decades, and it's very easy sometimes for people on the outside to look in at a company like PR by the book and say, oh, wow, because we're looking at the highlight reel. We're
Hmm.
looking at social media. We're looking at what's online. And it's easy sometimes to look and say, oh man, their journey's just been up and to the right. Or like they've never really struggled like I struggle. They've never dealt with the problems that I deal with as a
Hmm.
small business owner. And of course, we know the fallacy in that. And so I want to ask you this question with that in mind. If I had the ability to snap my fingers and solve one problem in your business right now, what would you want that problem to be?
Say that I want authors to understand the long-term benefits of promoting themselves. I find that as a struggle because authors come to us and they're thinking of this 4 to 6 month window. And
Mm,
they're thinking, okay, I know I've got to promote this book for the next 4 to 6 months, but we have 2 clients that have been with us consistently for over 3 years each. And that is the type of relationship that I love to have with
mm,
authors. We've got a lot of clients that have been with us for a year, but the majority of PR by the book clients are thinking in terms of such a short term window. And I do my best to explain to them all the benefits of long term promotion. And like we talked about before, we have a lot of different programs that we customize where it's not as much of an investment as people, drop down to other levels for maintenance and things like that. But I would love to eventually, solve that problem where when authors come to us, they think, okay, I'm going to see this as an investment in my career, in my business, just like paid the bills for electricity, one of my favorite quotes was from Bill Gates, and he said, if I only had $2 left, I'd spend one on PR. And, it's just, he
That's good.
understood like that is a cost of doing business or having this part of my career. And, and those two authors that have been with us for 3 years, yeah, we've dropped down to a very low maintenance for them for a lot of the time that they've been with us. But we've also gone up and down, up to promote something big and then down to just kind of even out and then up again. And so we work with them for whatever those needs might be for that continual promotion. But think about it. Think about all the companies, Coca-Cola. They have an entire PR department that for years they have done PR month in and month out. And think about it. Some months would be busier than others on the earned media side of things. Some months would just be planting seeds, but it's always happening. And it's year after year, month after month, PR, PR, PR. So yeah, I'm constantly rolling that over in my mind thinking, how do we help these authors create a plan where they are willing to keep that investment as just a regular cost of doing business?
Absolutely. Just like you would think about marketing, right?
Exactly.
That's cost of doing
100%.
business. You've got to be investing in that. If you're not, how will people find out about you? This is similar. I love that. Thinking bigger, thinking longer is a decision that I have never regretted. But
Yes.
thinking short, boy, I've regretted that more than once. I love that you shared that. Thanks for that. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Well, I love that quote that you just said. I might be quoting you in my discovery meetings.
Very little is original. Most of the time, I'm sharing what I've learned.
Yeah. I mean, we're sponges.
That's I think what we all do. That's it. That's it. We're always constantly learning. Marika, this has been such a masterclass today in everything we've talked about. I'm so grateful to you for sharing with such honesty and such generosity from these decades of experience that you bring to this topic and from your own leadership journey. I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected to you and learn more from you and more about PR by the book. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, prbythebook.com is our website. There's a lot of information there. They can email info@prbythebook.com to receive our welcome deck. And we've also got author-to-influencer.com for the DIY solution for authors. And we're out on every single social media platform as PR by the Book.
We'll have all those links in the show notes.
Great.
Marika,
Well,
thank you so
this
much.
has been a joy for me too. I just want to thank you because I just really loved being a listener to your podcast. So I think you're a very wise person and great interviewer. So thanks for having me on.